welcome to American Dreams. My guest today is Anna David. Anna, welcome to today's show.
Thank you so much for having me, Alan.
So, Anna, you came as a recommendation of Joe Polish, and I think both of us have that common connection. And so I really look forward to today's segment. We spoke last time about a book that you co-authored with him called Miracle Morning, for addiction recovery. And anyways, that's how this meeting came about. And I'm really looking forward to hear about your background, how you got to where you are today, what you're currently working on, and let's go from there. So for the listeners, Anna, tell me your story.
My story, in a nutshell. I am the most relevant thing today. I'm 53 years old and having my first child in 2 weeks via surrogate. So I'm officially a very late bloomer. I didn't figure out how to support myself till I was 30 years old. And I didn't figure out how to run a successful business until I was 47. And I met the aforementioned Joe Polish, who really has transformed my life in ways I can't even describe. And so in those years, so I celebrated 23 years of sobriety last November 19th. And in that time, I've published 8 books. I've been able to be in 3 TEDx stages, been lucky enough to be on today's show, Good Morning America, The Talk, hundreds of times. And I've had several missions. I'm a big fan of the reinvention. I started off my career working for People and Premiere and Us Weekly, and I was a celebrity expert. That's how I started going on TV. Then I started writing for Playboy, and I became a dating and relationship expert. And then once I was sober, I became a recovery expert. And now I would say I'm an expert in book publishing, the secret being write a book about something and you become an expert in it.
I love it. So Legacy Launchpad is your current business that you founded?
Yes.
Okay, so
It is the only successful business I have ever founded.
Well, you in Legacy, you talk about having authority in building books. I like the approach you take about being authoritative, and give me a little bit of a sense of understanding of how this really came about.
Well, I wrote a New York Times best-selling book. And the secret about that is that once you do that, everybody starts coming to you and asking you to write their books. And I had already written a book for somebody and I didn't enjoy the experience. And so when people asked me, I always said no. And I've actually continued to say no. One person this was in 2016, was very insistent. His name's Darren Prince, and he's a very successful sports agent. And he wanted to get into recovery, addiction recovery, advocacy, and speaking. And he said to me, I'd like you to write my book. I said no. He was very insistent. So I hired somebody I knew, a writer who told me she was looking for work, and she wrote the book. I edited it, I published it, and I watched Darren launch a speaking career, get spokesperson jobs, get on Jay Shetty's podcast, get on Lewis Howes's podcast, get on all these TV shows, and launch a nonprofit and do all of these things and become a leading expert in the recovery movement. And then one client after another has come to us since then, in the past 5 years. So we published over 50 books and established authorities and watched our clients get on the Wall Street Journal bestseller list and get on the Today Show and add, hundreds of thousands of dollars to their bottom line. And so my clients are the ones who have taught me what a book can do for your career.
And what does it take, to get a book written? You work with individuals, and I'm sure a lot of people say, "Hey, Anna, just write a book about me. Just write a book about what I'm thinking." I mean, what is your process there?
Well, our process, about half the books we publish are are written by the clients. And the only reason I put that in quotes is someone who doesn't have experience writing a book or writing professionally is not going to do the best book. That's just a reality. No matter how many people tell them they're an amazing author, no matter how talented they are. In the same way, I don't run into a hospital and try to perform surgery on somebody because I have no training. So books that come to us complete often need a lot of reworking, which is not what the client wants to hear. Often they have spent a lot of money on people who claim to be experienced editors who didn't do very much to them. So our best books, I would say, are people who come to us and say, I am a successful X, and it really can be anything. And I want to share my story and I want to attract more clients. And I partner them with someone on my team who is, we have writers who write for the New York Times, and all sorts of leading publications. They partner. They spend 2 hours a week for 3 months speaking. The One of my writers is constantly giving them the work back. Yes, it's called ghostwriting, but we look at it more as we're documenting your greatness. Usually it takes about 6 months, and we put it through. I come from traditional publishing. I was published by HarperCollins and Simon and Schuster, so I know, and I've taught my team how to publish a book independently that's indistinguishable from a New York Times best-selling book, traditionally published book. So that's what we do, and we do all sorts of things. We do audiobooks, we do hardcovers. We have a system to get you Amazon reviews and to get your book to #1 bestseller spot. We have partners who help you get on the Wall Street Journal list. So we can really do whatever you want in the book publishing world.
I love your very comprehensive one-stop shop. We edit, we actually promote. So, person saying they finish the book. A lot of people want to self-publish, and then they realize, this is so hard. Yeah, how do you promote books? How do you what's the secret formula that you found over the years of best way to get the word out there about the new book that's just come out?
I would say the irony is that promoting doesn't promote book sales. I had a 5-minute segment on Good Morning America where I talked about my book. I sold maybe like 10 or 15 copies, but I brought in hundreds of thousands of dollars in new clients. So promotion is amazing for credibility, but the best way to get a book out there is to have somebody, other people promote it. There's something called the Tim Ferriss effect, where a writer, Michael Ellsberg, wrote about how he was in the New York Times and he was on the Today Show, and it didn't sell many books. And then Tim Ferriss wrote a blog post about him, and and the book went to #10 on Amazon or whatever it is. So I'm a big fan of doing what you can control. I spent 6 books obsessing over book sales, obsessing over why didn't my book do as well as someone else's. And I now say I would rather have 100 people read my book and have their lives transformed and hire my company than 10,000 who won't really care. I can't sell 10,000 copies. I can sell 100. And I can, if you are very intentional and very clear about who your book is for, the right people will read it. And that's what matters to me.
Anna, recently we had Joe Polish on. We discussed a book called The Miracle Morning for addiction recovery. And, Joe spoke a lot about his experience, but how did this relationship between you and Joe come about to where you co-authored together?
Oh, it's such a good story. I saw a Facebook post that my friend Tommy Rosen did an interview with Joe about his addiction and recovery. I had no idea who he was, but I had this sort of premonition. I need to know this person. I don't know why. At that time, I was very big in the addiction recovery movement. I was doing TEDx talks. I was writing books about it. I was editing websites about it. And I saw that my sister-in-law was friends with Joe on Facebook. I asked her to do an introduction. Joe called me and he's like, I got some friends in the car. We're going to be in LA. Hey, I'm doing a documentary about addiction recovery. Can I interview you for it? I'm staying at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel. Why don't you come over there? Now, to be clear, you should not go to the Beverly Wilshire Hotel if a man you have not met has asked you to go there. However, I knew this was a good idea. And I went there and he interviewed me for his documentary. And then after we were done, Tony Robbins texted him. And I sort of thought, who is this person? And he invited me to go to breakfast with him and his friend. His friend was somebody named Eben Pagan, who's one of the biggest marketers in the world. I had just sort of been introduced to the world of marketing. And I said, I'd love to stay and linger with you guys after breakfast, but I am doing my first webinar. Do you guys know what a webinar is? Again, I don't know. I'm talking to the world's biggest marketers. And they go, yeah. And I said, I'm very nervous. I've been studying this woman, Amy Porterfield. I've studied everything she says. I'm doing this thing. And they gave me advice. I said, I have 100 people signed up. Can you believe it? And they said, that's nothing. They said, you're not going to sell anything. And Eben said, if you want to sell anything from having 100 people signed up, instead of selling something, ask to get on a call with them at the end. I get home, and by the time I'm home, I get a voice note, and it's this woman's voice, and she says, hey, Anna, it's Amy Porterfield. My friend Joe Polish told me you're very nervous about your webinar. Would you like me to look at your slides? This was like God coming down and offering to look at my slides. I couldn't believe it. And I couldn't believe he did that without even telling me. And then he texted me and said, hey, do you want to come to dinner with me and a bunch of friends? And I went to dinner, met a whole bunch of his friends, and somebody at the end of the table picked up the tab for all of us. I hadn't even spoken to that person. And I said, who is this generous group I have encountered? That was my first day knowing Joe Polish.
Well, it's a great story, and Joe speaks so highly of you. If we walk through the collaboration and actually the book itself, moving into the Miracle Morning for Addiction Recovery, did Joe coming to you, and Joe was very transparent about his challenges to addiction recovery, and then it also sounds like you've had a journey yourself through this. So
yes,
when you stepped together and collaborated, what was it like? What was it like? What message were you trying to convey to the reader about there's hope?
well, I was really bottomed out on cocaine addiction in the late 90s. And I got sober. I went to rehab and I got sober. And I quickly realized that recovery was nothing like I expected it to be. I thought it was going to be a whole bunch of super depressed people sitting in rooms, chain smoking cigarettes, drinking coffee, talking about the good old days. And I very quickly discovered these were the most vibrant, exciting, charming, ambitious, alive, hilarious people I'd ever met. And I thought, my God, if I could show one person that recovery is not what they think it is, they will not have to go as low as I did. I wanted to kill myself, literally. And so I wrote a book called Party Girl, which is being made into a movie, which is incredible. So that has always been my mission, to sort of educate people about what it is. And my philosophy is sort of give it to make people think you're entertaining them, but really giving them messages that are going to save their lives. And so that was my experience. And Joe knew that. And he wanted to collaborate with me on a writing project. And so Hal Elrod was a member of Genius Network, Joe's group. And Hal was offering these opportunities. You could basically pay to write a miracle morning book in the genre you wanted to. And Joe and I collaborate well together because he's the big idea person and I'm the executor. And so I was able to sort of take both of our philosophies, take a lot of what I know Joe talks about and put it in this book. And since then we've collaborated on many, many things. As a surprise for him, I collected, before he'd ever published any book, before this, before his Wall Street Journal best-selling book, What's in It for Them, I took his newsletters, because there's such gems that he has in there, and I compiled them into a book, and I titled it Life Gives to the Giver, and I sent him 50 copies of a book he had written without knowing he had written it. So we're just very good collaborators.
From start to finish, how long did this take to get the book completed and out to market?
Oh, that book, we weren't in control of it. It was before I became a publisher, and so there, when my company's doing it, it's pretty efficient. When you're doing a traditionally published book, it's usually between a year and 3 years between contract signing and release. We do it in 6 months. That was slower because it was Hal Elrod's company that was managing it, and they sort of had other books in their pipeline. But writing that book was far easier than writing any other book, because there was a format. They provide a lot of the material in the different Miracle Morning books are the same in each one. So that probably only took me a few weeks to write.
Okay. All right. So, how do you approach a writing project when you have multiple individuals coming to you and wanting to write a book together versus working with a single author? Is there a particular process that you'll go through?
Well, I don't do any of the writing. It's all my team, and I will say, if I give one of my team members more than two books at a time, it is too much. We had there was another hybrid publisher that recently sort of went down in flames in scandal and went out of business, and I heard one of their team members talking, and it was a writer who was working on 6 books at once. You cannot do that. You cannot hold people's personal that many people's stories in your heart and soul. This is a process where you become very close to the collaborator, and it's an intimate experience. Sometimes they're telling you things that they've never told anybody before. And so I don't know what magic my team goes off and makes. I'm never a part of those conversations, but I hear the results and I see the results, and they're really, really incredible. Not always. Sometimes it's a bad fit. We always do a vibe check, because we've had people who, I had a team member early on who would start working with people and they didn't like her. So she's not a team member anymore, but it has to be the right fit.
Yeah, and I'm going to ask you a question, kind of put you on the spot, but I'll preface this. So I'm going to ask you, when it comes to the cost of writing and publishing, uh, what should a person expect?
It is all over the map. There is a company called Self Publishing School that will help you through the entire process, and I believe it's $7,000. There's Forbes Publishing, which I believe charges $200,000. So we are right in the middle of that. We do have a $7,000 offer, but the book has to be complete, and it's not published under our main Legacy Launchpad banner. But we do have packages that go up to $100,000, and people buy them. It's broken down into 6 payments, and yes, you get what you pay for. I will say I don't think you need to pay $200,000, but some people want that. We have people who they just say, "I want your top tier package. I don't care what it costs." But it is expensive to get a great writer writing your book, and it's not affordable for most people, which is why we have the $7,000 offer where you can get published at with the top professionals doing it for you, but you're not going to get that hands-on white glove concierge experience.
I love that. And you answered that so well. It's a comparable question: is how much is a car? And like,
Yeah.
right. They're all over the board.
Yeah.
And so I think if you want the best of the best, there's a market rate for that.
Yeah.
And it's been a pleasure having you with us today. Any last advice for what you'd say for how a person should prepare before they come to you?
You should be able to fill in the sentence, my book is for blank, so they can blank, so I can blank. You should be incredibly clear about the fact that you are not going to be the exception to the rule, probably. You are not going to make millions of dollars from book sales. You're not going to even make tens of thousands of dollars from book sales. And so get really clear about what you want your reader to do. You should have a business. If you want to do this and have it not be volunteer work, you should have a business that your book is going to lead people to. And you should be really clear about who your book is for and what you want them to do
And Anna,
once they read it.
how does the person find you on Legacy Lunch?
I am all over the place. You can find me on social media at Anna B. David, but LegacyLaunchpadPub.com is our hub. If you want to get that formula that I just described, you could go to bookinasentence.com and we'll just send it to you.
Anna, it's been a pleasure having you with us today here on American Dreams.
Thank you so much for having me, Alan. I really appreciate it.